Good morning, Asean. Freshen up your world, your thought, and your idea with us every weekday from 7:30 to 8 a.m. I'm Patsurang Desha Puttarangsi.
And I'm Weena Dongbrasit. It's Monday, the 1st of July.
Yep, foreign ministers from the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, kicked off the series of meetings in Brunei just yesterday to discuss key economic and political issues in the region. Beijing actually agreed to hold official consultations on a proposed Code of Conduct (COC) governing naval actions at a meeting with ASEAN in China down there in September, a step that ASEAN member Thailand's foreign minister hailed as very significant. The two sides had already agreed to hold a foreign ministers meeting, which will follow a special ASEAN ministers gathering on the South China Sea issue in Thailand in August. Well, according to Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, he said both China and other coastal states in the South China Sea are making efforts for a stable South China Sea. Well, but Wang stressed that any progress on agreeing the new framework would be dependent on countries following a confidence-building declaration of conduct agreed in 2002, which it accuses the Philippines of violating. He said that he believes any activity taken by individual claimant countries to go against the trend will not enjoy the support of the majority of the countries and will not succeed either. Well, according to Philippine Foreign Minister Albert del Rosario at the regional summit in Brunei, he accused Beijing of causing increasing militarization of the South China Sea. But critics said China is intent on cementing its claims over the sea through its superior and growing naval might, and has little interest in rushing to agree a code of conduct with ASEAN nations, four of which have competing claims.
Moving to Thailand, His Majesty the King has yesterday granted an audience to the Thai Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra and new cabinet members for a swearing-in ceremony. The ceremony took place at SIRIRAJ hospital, where the much-revered monarch has been undergoing treatment for years. Yingluck and most of the new cabinet members met at Government House yesterday afternoon for a group photo before heading to SIRIRAJ hospital. Yingluck earlier yesterday cut short her official trip to an immigration checkpoint and temple in Mukdahan and flew back to Bangkok for the ceremony. There are 11 newcomers in Yingluck's cabinet, including veteran politician and women's rights activist Pawina Hongsakul. As widely expected, Pawina got the post of Social Development and Human Security Minister. An ABAC poll of 467 respondents from Thursday to Saturday showed Pawina receiving overwhelming public support to head the Social Development and Human Security Ministry, with 88% backing her. 70% backed Jaturon Chai-sang as the new education minister. 66% agreed with the appointment of General Yuttasak Sasipapa as deputy defense minister, but only 41% backed Chalerm Yubamlung to helm the labor ministry. 71% approved Prime Minister Yingluck's move to double up as defense minister, becoming the first woman to head Kingdom's defense ministry in a cabinet reshuffle that gives her more influence over the powerful army that ousted her brother.
The Indonesian government has promised to remove all the permits deemed to have hampered investments in the country, both in the manufacturing sector and oil and gas sector, amid growing concerns from investors about the complicated licensing procedure in the country. Coordinating Economic Minister Hatta Rajasa said the government would soon introduce an economic policy package, which would simplify the licensing procedures to do business in trade, manufacturing, oil and gas exploration activities. As part of a licensing simplification plan, his office would transfer the license granting authority from ministries or local governments to the Single Window Integrated Licensing Service, or PTSP. Besides simplifying the licensing procedures, the government would also remove the regulations that have no legal basis and are not supported by a higher law. For example, the regulations issued by the Director General or ministries, which are not supported by higher law. And Hatta also added that there were thousands of problematic permit regulations, either those issued by local governments or those issued by ministries. For example, in order to open a gasoline station, this is like you would need 17 different licenses. Or to conduct mining exploration, you would need another 25 licenses. And in order to begin commercial production, you have to obtain another 25 permits. So he said that another policy focus is to foster legal certainty by setting the number of days needed to acquire licenses. And the licensing problems have become the main concern of investors when they open their business in Indonesia. Well, besides licensing problems, lack of legal certainty and lack of transparency are specific areas which should be surmounted by the government in order to be able to attract more foreign investors. And all in all, Hatta said that he hopes that economic policy package would encourage investment, ease business, increase competitiveness, and improve the economic outlook. And the coordinating ministry is also prepping a negative investment list, or DNI, which will be discussed at a coordination meeting next week.
Many Vietnamese banks are seeking support from foreign partners, including Japanese investors, in a bid to boost their capital. A senior banking official who wished to remain unnamed told Dow2 investment newspaper that his bank was currently in negotiations to sell some of his stakes to a Japanese banking giant. He said the Japanese partner had been chosen as there are similarities in cultures and retail strategies between Japan and Vietnam. Saigon Tuong Tin Commercial Joint Stock Bank, or Sacombank, planned to sell 20% of its stakes to a foreign partner this year in order to increase charter capital. According to his chairman, Fu Hu Fu, Japanese investors were among those being highly considered. At a shareholders meeting of the Housing Development Bank, or HD Bank, in April, the bank announced its plan to call for capital from strategic foreign partners. It later cooperated with businesses from Japan and the UK and hired a consultancy company to seek further appropriate partners. Many Japanese investors had already poured money in buying stakes in Vietnamese banks. At the end of 2012, Vietnam Joint Stock Commercial Bank for Industry and Trade, or Vietin Bank, signed an agreement to sell a 20% stake worth $822 million of its business to Japanese bank Tokyo Mitsubishi UFJ.
As we all know, Myanmar has already granted 2 telecom licenses to 2 telecom conglomerates,
yes,
which are
Telenor
and Kuwait, from South Africa.
Yes.
Coming from that analysis in Myanmar Focus Daily after the break.
About 400 Buddhist monks and local residents shared a protest against Time magazine in central Yangon near Seoul Pagoda on Sunday. Time magazine's latest cover story, dubbed a radical Buddhist monk, Yu Viratu, the face of Buddhist terror, documenting the ongoing sectarian violence between Buddhists and Muslims. The Myanmar government has banned the Time magazine in response to the article and gave permission for the people to protest. The protests come several weeks after the latest outbreak of sectarian violence that killed 1 man in the north of the country. About 1,200 Muslim residents were forced to find shelter at a Buddhist monastery after their homes were burned. In March, religious unrest also erupted in the central part of the country, killing at least 44 people over a course of 3 days. At least 192 people have been killed since sectarian violence flared up midway through last year, with tens of thousands either evacuated or homeless. Muslims make up about 5% of the estimated 60 million people in Myanmar. The unleashing of ethnic and religious violence after 49 years of military rule raises questions over whether the reformist government has full control over security forces as the country goes through its most dramatic changes since a coup in 1962.
2 telecom licenses have been granted to 2 telecom conglomerates by the Myanmar government. Let's see this analysis and the challenges ahead for these 2 telecom conglomerates in Myanmar Focus Daily.
Norway's Telenor Communications and Qatari Ooredoo Company secured 2 telecommunication licenses in Myanmar, one of the last untapped telecommunication markets. However, this is seen only as an initial step for these 2 foreign companies in the country. Myanmar Focus Daily Special today we speak to the CEO of research firm Tura Swiss on strengths and weaknesses of telecom licensed winners and the challenges they may face when rolling out operations in Myanmar amid the anti-Muslim sentiment in the country.
The strengths and weaknesses, I think both companies have experience building up a good telecom networks. I think both can do a good job in Myanmar and build up a network within a reasonable period. I think that's the good thing. Weaknesses, let's say, Telenor was very much already tipped in advance, so people were talking about Telenor since 1 or 2 weeks, while nobody was talking about the Qatari telecom company Ooredoo. So this was a real big surprise yesterday that Ooredoo was announced as one of the winners. And Ooredoo didn't do a lot of marketing campaigns, so people even don't know very much about that company and just started to read or find out more about that company when the award was the license was awarded yesterday.
Acquiring the licenses is only the first step for operation in Myanmar. There will be challenges ahead as Myanmar government requires the 2 companies to launch the coverage for the broad area of the nation within a short period of time. However, some areas of Myanmar are not accessible.
You often hear in the context of Myanmar the need for technologies. So it means like Myanmar can build up a telecom network that is state of the art within the next 4 or 5 years. And although this is true, and we thought in the case of Thailand, for example, that the telecoms network was built up within 10 years, and Thailand is like now around 20 to 130% mobile penetration. So this might be true in Myanmar as well, that technologically we will have mobile penetration. We will have a network that is state of the art, and we will have high mobile penetration. But on the other hand, if we compare, for example, Myanmar's GDP or economic power with Thailand, we see that we're 30 years behind. So even if we have in 5 years a very good network, Myanmar's consumer spending power will be very low for the time being. And this means that the majority of the population is rather poor. Most of the money will be spent for food, will be spent for housing, and not much money will be available for spending for luxury goods, for telecoms, and so on. So this might be a challenge that it will take some considerable time until telecoms companies are making profits out of this investment.
One big challenge, especially for Qatari Ooredoo, is the current anti-Muslim sentiment in Myanmar. There has been some comments about this winner from the Muslim country on social media after the announcement. But this analyst believes that this shows the side that Myanmar government has chosen the economic interests of the country over the sentiment. But there is also a possibility for the people to choose a Telenor over Ooredoo.
We see in this case that Myanmar will really care about the kind of financial aspects of the proposal and will not reject an operator just because it comes from a certain country. Now, on the other hand, of course, it is true that there has been some sentiment against Muslims in the country, but I think mainly people will, once the operator comes online, people will mainly care about the technology. If this new telecom company has the technology, has the more penetration, and can deliver what they promised, I think people will still subscribe to this new telecoms company. On the other hand, there were, for example, in the social media, we read that this Ooredoo has been applying strict censorship to content in internet in other countries, so people are a bit concerned about if this company is just doing the same in Myanmar, and if this company is doing it, then there might be a possibility that people will rather use Telenor instead.
The analyst suggested Ooredoo needs to do more PR and marketing campaign in Myanmar to change people's perspective to compete with Telenor that already has a good reputation in the country. Another challenge for these two winners is that there is no telecommunication bill yet. It is now being debated in the current parliament session.
However, the telecoms law, of course, is not yet in place, but I don't expect that Myanmar will be setting impediments for these telecom operators to be successful here. So I think they will have to license the concession for extended period, and they will be quite free to operate. The main concerns might be maybe the old telecoms law. The old draft had some provisions for like the state being able to intervene, to get access in emergency cases and so on. So this might be some ongoing discussions.
Yet the arrival of international telecom operators to Myanmar would definitely change the landscape of the industry in Myanmar. VIETNAMESE from Myanmar Focus Daily.
That's it for today's edition of Good Morning ASEAN. We'll see you again, same time, same place, same channel.
Thank you so much for joining. I'm Rina Prasid.
And I'm Patsurang Desha Putrang Si. Swadee ka.
Swadee ka.